Good afternoon, America. Welcome once again to the Meat and Potato Show, conservative talk and awesome rock. Proving once again that the Meat and Potato Show is nationwide, calling all the way from Texas, is the Democratic senatorial candidate. She's going after John Cornyn's seat from Texas, Kesha Rogers. Kesha Rogers is from the Democratic wing of the LaRouche Democrats. And as I was saying to Kesha off the camera, I have had a chance to do tons of interviews with tons of candidates over the years, and every time I reach out to the Democratic side, nobody from that side returns my phone calls or even returns my emails, except these guys. I did them in 2010. I talked to Rachel Brown a lot, and now again, Kesha's back onto the show again, and the candidate interview series continues for 2014. So Kesha Rogers, thank you once again for calling into the Meat and Potato Show. How are you, dear?
I'm good. Good to be back on with you.
It's great. Let's get right into the interview. I know you're pressed for time here. My interviews have taken the Meat and Potato Show into Texas a couple of times this year. On the Republican side, I've had Colonel Reed Reeser be on the show a couple of times. And much like you, even with the GOP, many of the outsider candidates have been sidetracked and been summarily cut out of the process and cut out of the debates. With Colonel Reeser, I mean, there was a last minute, 0 hour, there was a plant from the Republican Party put in that stole votes from him. And you yourself are up against a hard fight. And the Texas Democratic Party is not making it easy for you, are they? Go ahead, Kesha.
Oh, no. Well, I'll just start with this. Like a lot of the listeners remember when myself and my good friend Rachel Brown, who took on the infamous Barney Frank there in the Boston area. And we took on Barney Frank in his attack against Glass-Steagall,
Sure.
and what came out as the Dodd-Frank Act.
Here we go.
Now, what I've been doing with my campaign here in Texas as a part of the national driver, as a LaRouche Democrat, is to make clear that we're headed now for a total free fall in our banking and financial system, that Wall Street speculation, the Wall Street apparatus has taken over both parties, and that the support of bills and policies such as the Dodd-Frank Act, which has been a complete atrocity, continuing to push a bail-in policy, which right now the entire financial system is bankrupt because we haven't because we have not already reinstated Glass-Steagall. The crisis is becoming more and more devastating in terms of the financial collapse, and you see this wreaking havoc on the lives and livelihoods of the population.
There has
and so,
go ahead.
That's what the Democratic Party right now of Texas is afraid of, is that we're challenging this. We're challenging the fact that they've gone away from what the real commitment of the Democratic Party in the tradition of the Franklin Roosevelt JFK tradition by going along with this Wall Street interest.
Interesting. Let's talk about how the Democratic Party, again, has been working against your campaign. And I'm going to quote from the Texas Tribune here. And a quote, "I know very little about the Democratic candidates for the U.S. Senate," said Steve Munisteri, the chairman of the Texas Republican Party. "And if I'm the state chairman of the Republican Party, and I've never heard of these people before, I would presume that they did not pick candidates that had a well-established base." Well, doesn't that beat all, Kesha? I mean, doesn't that just show you how out of touch the mainstream, not only the media, but the mainstream, the GOP, even the DNC, is out in America? I mean, I interviewed Callahan out in Oregon. He ended up getting national fame with his blah, blah, blah thing that was going on out there in Oregon. He was shanghaied. And then, of course, Reeser, I mentioned Reeser in Texas. He was shanghaied. But tell us some more about the roadblocks that have been thrown in your way by the DNC. Now, go ahead here, and I'm going to add as you go along, because I think I know where you're going.
Right.
Go ahead.
Right. Well, I find that very interesting because, first of all, I've won 2 congressional nominations here in the state of Texas, running for the U.S. House of Representatives, House Seat 22, District 22, on the platform of Save NASA and Impeach Obama in 2010, 2012, defeating the Democratic establishment pick for the candidate. The Republicans very well knew who I was at that time,
right.
And so that was just a show.
Yeah,
now, I can tell you, I mean, he knows who I am. That was just kind of put on a media show. But the reality is, look, What I've done with this campaign is to shake up the woodworks of the establishment. They've thrown in everything along with the kitchen sink to try to stop me because everything is based on you have to take a loyalty oath to our President Obama, which I refuse to do.
Sure.
You have to get in line with the establishment, which I refuse to do. And because I stood up on principle, and the fact that these guys threw millions of dollars into the campaign prior to the primary, during the primary, I was in the race with 4 other candidates. There were 5 candidates altogether for the Texas primary. My platform was out. Glass-Steagall now impeach Obama for his crimes against the Constitution. Now going for a full-scale credit program and for large, addressing the need for large-scale jobs, the job programs, the science driver program, and to address the devastating drought hitting most of North America, the North American continent, including most emphatically Texas and California.
Yeah,
But what happened is that the Democratic Party, my opponent put close to $5 million of his own money into this campaign to try to defeat me. Going into the election for the primary, I had about $30,000 and was able to actually wage a runoff election because of what we were going out there with solutions and a real platform to inspire the population.
Very good, very good. To continue here, even in the Free Beacon, it says here in the Washington Free Beacon, just more of how they're treating you and the whole LaRouche Democrats, and just the fact, and you just said it yourself about how you've gained in the primary. Everybody knows who you are. But again, from the paper, the Washington Free Beacon, the Texas Democratic Party has repeatedly distanced itself from Rogers, a longtime acolyte of left-wing conspiracy theorist Lyndon LaRouche. I love the way the media just throw this stuff out there. Rogers supports the impeachment of President Barack Obama and has questioned the official account of September 11 and has compared U.S. officials to Nazis. Now, Kesha, did you call our U.S. officials Nazis? And if you did, good for you, Kesha. And I've long spoken out about the military of our police and federal agents, civilian unrest training. What is the platform of the LaRouche Democrats on the restoration of our Constitution? And let's talk a little policy here. You know what I'm talking about how the federal agencies are becoming militarized now. And this is a stark abrogation of the constitutional law. So go on, take it from here. Talk policy.
Well, look, the Democratic Party establishment in Obama has been long-term acolytes of the British Empire, the Queen, and Wall Street. And so this is the problem. Look, what they're afraid of right now is what I represent and what Mr. LaRouche has been represented as a long-term fight to return this nation to the principles of our American system republic, which was identified under the Hamilton, under the George Washington, Franklin Roosevelt, Benjamin Franklin tradition of the nation.
Yeah, the classical liberals, what they call classical liberals.
What they're about is the population is responding to this, and they want the population to actually stay suppressed, enslaved, and to think that they don't live in a nation which is embodied by the principles of by and for the people.
Now, I found this on the Lyndon LaRouche Political Action Committee site, and it's dated May 12th, and I find it completely right on the mark. I mean, you couldn't have hit the nail square if you tried twice as hard. The anti-science green policies embraced by both Bush and Obama have destroyed basic relations, worse as science and any scientific outlook generally, undermined our dedication to fundamental scientific and technological progress, and decimated the alliance of producers to which used to be the Democratic Party. And now the Democratic Party has always worn the mantle of big education supporters. Yet our lead in science and technology, it's pretty much evaporating under this current liberal socialist model, and you know about Common Core, and I just heard you said you agree. Common Core is completely insane. It also violates already standing federal laws, but if we continue to hollow out our education, how can we be prepared for the projects on the scale of the LaRouche campaign? And folks, just go on to the LaRouche campaigns. They're national projects, and these things haven't been seen since World War II, since the 50s, and right up to Kennedy. These are the things that defined America at one point in time. So go ahead, Kesha.
Well, the solution to this is that we have to immediately crush the anti-science, the pro-green, and the environmentalist agenda of the British Empire and the Queen of England of population reduction. This policy of the environmentalist policy is a anti-growth policy that has to be stopped now. When it's anti-science, you are looking at the fact that this drive in the environmentalist agenda has taken us backwards in our scientific production and our technological and industrial advancement. A policy of pushing a population reduction, that's what it does. When we're talking about going with sources of energy per se, such as the solar and wind, they are net loss, inefficient sources of energy.
Sure.
You have to go with the next phase of energy sources, higher states of energy flux density, higher states of energy advancement, meaning we need to go nuclear, we need to go to higher sources of thermonuclear fusion development.
Sure, exactly. But this brings me back to the question. We keep hollowing out our educational system. Kids today are stupid. I mean, I've got a 14-year-old. She's not stupid. She's actually smarter than everybody else in her class because, well, she's my kid. But even she says, I look at the stuff that's coming out of her school, her homework, her textbooks. It's stupid. How do we have the next generation of scientists who invent the next fusion engine or the next technology that revolutionizes American science? How do we do that with Common Core?
Well, no more Common Core, no more Bush League and Obama League education programs. We need to revamp our entire education system. And the way we're going to do that is we need a commitment toward a mission in this country where the first priority of our nation has to be to inspire the creative spark in every single human being, individual, from when they're very young age and going through grade school and adolescent and so forth, and developing these young people to make profound discoveries and creative discoveries and master the original ideas and intentions that went into this classical artistic discoveries and scientific discoveries. We need to actually get our children from a young age mastering the works of Bach, of Mozart, of Beethoven, to the scientific discoveries of Kepler's harmonic orderings of the solar system, to Einstein's work. And so you have to have a platform in educational development that starts with a classical education to get young people to think creatively, not to be taught how to think or what to think, but to be able to be creative and being able to express themselves and be able to think freely.
And here's the thing, too. I mean, you're in Texas. I mean, to put a national platform on education.
We have one of the worst education systems here in Texas, unfortunately.
But here's the thing I just want to say is that if you have a top-down federal system like Common Core, a child learning in Boston, Massachusetts, is going to learn a whole different set of values, set of parameters because he lives in Boston, as opposed to a child out in your state of Texas. Even in Austin, the child in Austin will be learning differently from, say, a child who's up in the Panhandle area who does ranching or whatever. I mean, that's a completely different way of life, a whole different set of values, and the Common Core thing doesn't fit. But let's move on. Let's talk about, and keeping on a little bit on education. Do you think that the whole destruction of American family values and in education, of critical thinking in education, like we just talked about, have made the race relations worse? And do you think it's brought a deepening of poverty and violence into the inner cities?
Absolutely. Well, what's made the race relations worse is the control over our nation and our institutions of government of the corporate cartels, Wall Street interests, and the fact that both parties have been bought out, and that there are not people people in our institutions of government who are actually acting as representatives of the people of this nation. And so you have the fact that people feel that they're fighting over crumbs. You have trillions of dollars, quadrillions of dollars of bailouts going out to 27 megabanks that are getting slapped on the wrist when they do something wrong and are being told that they're too big to jail, too big to fail. And people are out there losing their jobs, they're losing their homes. You know, you have record unemployment rates. And when people feel that they're actually having to be pitted against each other like herded cattle and slaves, and that they are not being treated as citizens of a republic and real human beings, then you have racial relations. I talk to people every single day. Families are being broken up. More divorces are happening under this president, under this administration than I've ever seen in quite some time. The children are not being given a clear path to a future, and that's what we have to change. We're destroying our society right now. When we actually had real leadership, visionary leadership for the nation, whether it was under Lincoln, under under President Kennedy and Franklin Roosevelt, more so, the nation, we had our problems and you had racial issues and so forth, but it was being brought together.
Right, and we evolved out of it over time. I don't even think. I mean, okay, great. The civil rights movement. It's a part of American history. I mean, but again, government stepped in, and we all know that horribly racist statement that Lyndon Johnson made when the Civil Rights Bill was passed, and he made that statement, "I'll have those you-know-whats voting Democrat for the next 200 years," and that's what it ended up being. It just ended up being a political ploy. Whereas if we just left it alone, we let the country work its problems out, we respect states' rights issue, over time I think we would have solved the civil rights problem and the race relation problem a long time ago. You wouldn't see the fomenting that goes on today. Every time we have something like the knockout game goes on, or statistics that come out, I mean, Al Sharpton, Jesse Jackson, all these guys, these race baiters, they get out there and they start trumpeting the Democratic racial horn, and I know that you're not on that. So, but let's move on here.
Well, your biggest problem, I have to say this, your biggest problem, especially in whether it's the southern states or elsewhere, has been this question of states' rights. That is the problem with not just the racial question, but more so a division of what is intended to uniquely be our unique American system, the development of the Union. And when you look at the fact that what Lincoln was doing with his programs in really continuing the tradition of John Quincy Adams, Alexander Hamilton, Benjamin Franklin before him, with the development of the Greenback policy, the development of the transcontinental railway system, Lincoln knew this was the only way that you were going to break the British imperial control over the Confederacy and the southern states, and to run the foreign interests out of there. And I bring that up for a very particular reason, because you cannot save this nation with the nation trying to break apart into how do we defend our own state's interests. It has to be a national mission.
Now let's talk about something that's affecting your states particularly, and it's called illegals, illegal entry into this country. With the tens of millions of illegal aliens in our nation, they're all going to be called into this Affordable Care Act. And Joe Wilson was correct, folks, when he called the president a liar. He was 100% correct, because I've seen it. And I've actually did a short film piece on the Meat and Potato Show about it. I had my Obamacare form here from Massachusetts, and it quite specifically said, no proof of ID required if you cannot prove your residency. Now, is this going to destroy the system, or what, Kesha?
I think that when we look at this as a single issue in of itself, we have to address the question of, first of all, what are we doing with the economic policies to continue to support the devastation of sovereign nation states, whether it's supporting the drug cartels and the policies of NAFTA and CAFTA that's destroying countries like Mexico, or whether it's over in Ukraine supporting policies of not Nazi interest in.
I want to stop there. Hang on, stop there. It's Joe Biden's son. Joe Biden's son just got some lucrative deal with oil and gas, I think, over in the Ukraine. I mean, hello. I mean, how much more obvious can we get here?
Yeah, well, we know what's going on.
Hello?
Look, in Ukraine, this whole threat is to destroy the sovereign nation states, is to push the threat of World War III thermonuclear war. We see the destruction of sovereign nation states going on with the insane policy of fracking here in the United States as well as in Mexico, away from a real policy platform for energy development around nuclear and thermonuclear fusion economy.
Sure.
Fracking is a net loss resource, a net loss energy source. Not only that, but when we talk about, when we talk about the oil and gas industry, there's most definitely efficient sources of use for the oil and gas industry. But right now, we're actually messing with and we're destroying our food supply. We are destroying the water systems by taking the last remains of our already depleted water systems and putting that into the ground to extract natural gas out of the ground, where whole cities in Texas, whole counties are being left dry without water supply.
Yeah, let's hang on right there, because I want to talk about this. And oil and fracking isn't the only large consumer of water resources. You make a very a very good point right there. They're consuming millions of gallons of water in an area that is very scarce of water, and you guys all have water rights issues going on with farmers and ranchers and just everybody else that, just homeowners and everybody else. Water rights issues in that part of the country are a very major issue. But oil and fracking isn't the only large one. Let's look at another one. A few years back in Georgia, they suffered a major drought with lakes. I mean, there were pictures on the internet all over the place. Lakes being drained hundreds of yards from their shores. Docks collapsed because they just fell into the dried up areas. But yet the Nestle bottled water company was able to suck over 12 million gallons a day for its bottled water plant in Georgia. But yet if you were out washing your car, the cops would show up and hand you a $100 ticket or a fine. I mean, who runs this country, Kesha? I mean, who's running this place now?
Yeah, we've got a lot of that in Texas and elsewhere. We have cities that are being told that they have to limit their water usage. But that's not the solution.
Right.
That's never going to work. First of all, we're talking about, look, if we had done what was being prepared to be done what was being put forth as a policy back in the 1960s under the vision of President John F. Kennedy, his brother Bobby Kennedy, and other leaders throughout this nation, including former Governor of Texas, John Connally here, with various programs connected to the North American Water and Power Alliance.
Right.
If we had actually taken on those programs and not allowed the genocidal policies of the green environmentalist agenda to come in and wreak havoc over our nation's policies for a real economic platform, we could have had we could have had the North American Water and Power Alliance in place.
Right.
We could have already been addressing the problems of the drought, and not only that, in the Northeast area, the problems of the flooding. We could have already had programs in place to address the need for bringing water into these devastated areas that have been dried out.
And let me tell you something, folks. You read a lot of stuff on the LaRouche campaign site, and there's a lot of negative press about how they've got these pie-in-the-sky ideas. What Kesha just said, these aren't necessarily LaRouche solutions to problems. She just told you that these things were already in place and being researched back in the 60s. If we had done it, we would have had them by now. So, the negative press that you guys get, I've never agreed with that. And I'll tell you right now on the show, I don't always agree with a lot of your policies. But like I said earlier, you guys are the only ones who come onto the show, and I absolutely enjoy it. And folks, there's a little bit of historical fact. These things were already thought of back in the 60s. It's not just these guys' ideas. This stuff had been on for a long time. But let's move on quick. We only got about 5 minutes left here because I know you want to get out of here. But I want to talk about the runoff election and how that all happened. Oh, and tell me about Emil, his sexual misconduct accusation, and was that a factor in the close number? And just tell us who this guy is and tell us about the runoffs.
Okay, so my opponent in the runoff election is David Alamiel.
Yeah.
We ended up in a runoff election. He came in with 47%, and I had about 22%. Wow. And in Texas, you have to get 50%. Now, Mr. Alamiel is nothing more than a Wall Street Obamaton Democrat who is just like my opponent, John Cornyn, who is John Cornyn, who is a Wall Street Republican.
Right.
And as a matter of fact, my opponent in the past has given money, hundreds of thousands of dollars, to the Republican Party, including people like John Cornyn supporting his campaign. So it's all the same when you come to think about this Wall Street interest. Now, my opponent has become a millionaire, multimillionaire, by selling his chain of dental clinics to hedge funds connected to Black Canyon Capital,
wow.
Which is connected to Michael Milken.
Wow.
Jeff Bonkin's Michael Milken. Remember him?
Oh, yes. There's a blast from the past. Wow.
Oh, yeah.
So, is the press covering this? I know I've read a bunch of news articles and a bunch of stuff through the web, and you're on my page anyway. So every time you send something up on Facebook, it automatically feeds to me. But I haven't.
Okay.
Nothing was mentioned about that. About the link to Milken.
Oh yeah, well they're not mentioning that per se, but that is very known, and we've gotten that in the sources are public sources. And now the second thing which they have come out with, and there was just a article not too long ago that was released in the Houston Chronicle that reported that my opponent Alamiel, who during the time of his ownership of his dental clinics, his chief financial officer was taken to court and was charged with sexual harassment in the dental clinics. Now, what has people, including Democrats themselves, in an uproar about the situation is the fact that my opponent supported this and allowed this to happen. But what he did is he fired the women who went to the EEOC, and he fired the women.
Oh, that's a bad move.
And he rehired the chief financial officer. At first, he fired the chief financial officer. Then he changed his mind. He actually fired the women, and then rehired the chief financial officer. And he made a law in his offices thereafter that all women working in his dental clinic would have to wear long sleeve shirts and, quote, not speak unless they are spoken to.
Woo.
Not speak on the phone. So I don't know, I think this guy thinks Texas, because he supports fracking too, and they were talking about Texas is going to be the next Saudi Arabia. I don't know, maybe he's thinking Texas is already going to be the next Saudi Arabia and you have to get the women in line or something. But
put them in
that
burqas.
is not...
We'll have to put them in burqas.
People very upset.
I hope you're getting fitted for your burqa, Kesha. I mean, come on, just the eyes. That's all you're allowed. Kesha, how do you feel about going into May 27th? How are things looking up for you?
Well, I can tell you, this campaign is being looked at with eyes on it from all over the world. We are going to transform history, the direction of history, by what we are able to accomplish in this campaign. It's looking very good because one thing, the Democrats are pumping in millions of dollars, but one thing they don't have is a real strategy to go out and inspire the population to bring about solutions. So we can't say exactly what's going to happen here, but from every last minute that we have throughout the next couple of days, we're going to pull out the vote.
Good for
in
you.
every way that we can.
Good for you.
So it's looking very good, and anybody who's listening who has family in Texas, who lives in Texas, please get them out to the voting polls if they haven't already voted.
Sure.
This is not a Democrat or Republican issue. But if they're independent, if they didn't vote in the Republican Party primary, because look, I'm the only one who's qualified to take on and defeat John Cornyn, the Wall Street Republican. And so people can do everything that they can in these next days, hours remaining to help me to pull out the vote.
Give your website information to your campaign site, and we'll wrap things up here because we're at 30 minutes here.
Okay, great. Website address is Kesha Rogers. That's KESHAROGERS. KeshaRogers.com. And you can reach me if you want to call. The number is 713-830-9052. And we have people calling into the office. Let us know what you're able to do.
And
calling with contributions.
All of this information will be put onto the video and onto the website of the Meat and Potato Show. Kesha, thank you so much. Good luck. Good luck. As I said before.
Thank you.
As I said before, you're the only ones on the Democrat side that ever returned my phone calls. And I look forward to more conversations with you and other ones from your group, regardless of how the primaries shake out. Because, even after the September, well, you've got the May one coming up, and then there are other big ones coming up in August and September. As the election gets forward, I want to hear what you guys have to say and throw in your insight on where things are going here. Kesha Rogers, running up against Senator John Cornyn in Texas. Kesha, have a good day. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Bye.
Well, there you go. That was great. They're the only ones that ever call back. They truly are the only ones on the Democrat side that call back to the show. And I'm sorry that it's taken us so long to get them back onto the show. But that's going to change as this season goes along, regardless of how the primaries shake out. Because I always have the candidates on after either they've won or they've lost, just so that we can get some insight. Sometimes when they lose, it frees them up to pretty much say whatever they want because, well, they're no longer in the running. And that's a problem sometimes. You have to be careful about how you address an issue or some of the things that you say. Not Kesha. Not her at all. Kesha, good luck. Thank you so much for coming on to the show. Christopher Mader, The Meat and Potato Show, conservative talk, and awesome rock.